At 40 below zero, exposed skin can frostbite in 10 minutes or less. So explain this. On the worst January nights in Montana, North Dakota, and northern Alberta, rows of semi-trucks sit parked at windswept highway lots in that air, with a human being sound asleep inside every single one. No hotel, no building, no backup. A thin metal box, a mattress, and cold that kills an unprotected person before sunrise. So how are these drivers not dead by morning? Your first guess is the obvious one. They leave the engine running all night. You are partly right, but at 40 below, a running engine is not enough. It can barely protect itself. The drivers who sleep soundly through those nights rely on a trick most people have never heard of, a device about the size of a loaf of bread hidden under the bunk. A version of that exact device is probably parked on a street near you right now, because every grocery store in the northern half of the country depends on it in January. But let us start with what everyone gets wrong. The engine running answer starts with federal law. A long-haul driver who has driven 11 hours must stop and rest for 10. Those trucks parked at midnight are legally home for the night, and since a diesel makes its own heat, the simplest move is to never shut it off. Partly, that is diesel anatomy. No spark plugs. These engines ignite fuel by squeezing air until it is hot enough to combust, so brutal in deep cold that trucks carry electric grid heaters to pre-warm the intake air. It is easier to never let the engine get cold at all. Here's what that costs. An idling heavy truck burns about 0.8 of a gallon per hour, so one 10-hour rest swallows roughly 8 gallons. Call it $30 a night per truck, all winter. Nationally, rest period idling consumes up to 1 billion gallons of diesel a year, around $3 billion spent going absolutely nowhere. But money is the small problem. At 40 below, the idling engine is failing at its own job. A big diesel at idle runs at maybe 3 to 11% efficiency, and in deep cold, it can't even hold its own operating temperature. It sits there, slowly going hypothermic, while unburned fuel washes past cold cylinders and thins the oil. Engine makers tell drivers to raise the idle to 800 or 900 RPM just to cope. And it gets stranger. Trucks up north wear a quilted cover strapped across the grill called a winter front. It is a blanket for the radiator, because a cooling system built to shed the heat of hauling 80,000 pounds up a mountain works so well at 40 below that it overcools its own engine. The machine that drags 40 tons over mountain passes has to be tucked in like a toddler to stay warm enough to run. So yes, the engine runs expensively, inefficiently, wrapped in a quilt. And even then, you haven't met the real threat, because the air is only the second most dangerous thing out there. The most dangerous thing sits inside the fuel tank. Diesel contains paraffin, actual wax, the same family of compounds as candles. At normal temperatures, the wax stays dissolved, but as the thermometer drops, it crystallizes out of the fuel. Standard number 2 diesel goes cloudy, somewhere between roughly 6 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The industry calls that the cloud point. If cooling continues, the crystals bind together, plug the fuel filter, and starve the engine until it dies. Drivers call it gelling. At the far end, you could tip the tank upside down and nothing would pour out. The truck does not run out of fuel. The fuel stops agreeing to be fuel. So how does anything diesel survive winter? Quiet chemistry almost nobody gets told about. Every fall, terminals across the cold states cut number 2 diesel with number 1, a lighter, kerosene-type fuel with almost no wax that stays liquid down to around 40 below. The blend runs anywhere from 10% kerosene to 60%, depending on the forecast, plus anti-gel additives that shatter wax crystals small enough to slip through filters, and this connects to the gas station you use. The pump quietly changes what it sells every November. Hold that thought. But at a true 40 below, even treated fuel is living on the edge, which is why northern trucks run heated fuel lines and filters. and why the far north has a commandment that sounds like superstition. Once the engine is warm, you do not shut it off. In Oymyakon, Siberia, the coldest inhabited place on Earth, where the record sits near 90 below, drivers leave engines running around the clock because a stopped engine may simply never restart. They drape blankets over hoods and wrap exhausts in mineral wool. And when an engine does die in that cold, the documented fix is lighting a fire underneath it, an open flame under a machine full of fuel, because the alternative is a truck that becomes a monument until spring. A dead engine at 40 below is not a breakdown, it is a countdown. Therefore, the engine must be kept alive at almost any cost. So if the engine has to stay alive anyway, why does the real trick live under the bunk? Because the smartest drivers split the problem in two, and the half they handed off was not solved by trucking at all. It's called a diesel-fired bunk heater, a miniature furnace that moved in under the bed. Inside a metal case about the size of a loaf of bread, 6 pounds or so, sits a small sealed combustion chamber. A metering pump pulls a trickle of diesel from the truck's own tank. A glow pin ignites it, and a fan pushes cabin air across the hot heat exchanger while the exhaust vents outside. Sealed away from the air, the driver breathes. The engine stays off. The driver stays warm, and the numbers are almost unfair. A common unit puts out around 7,500 BTU, while sipping, at full blast, 0.07 of a gallon per hour, about a coffee cup of diesel for every hour of heat. A full 10-hour rest costs well under a gallon, since the heater cycles like a home thermostat. The idling engine doing the same job burns roughly 8 gallons. One Fleet magazine ran it as 11 cents an hour versus $2 an hour. Therefore, a box that costs about $1,000 to $2,000 installed pays for itself in months. Industry reports credit it with erasing 85 to 90% of winter idle fuel. Its big brother, the APU, a suitcase-sized generator that can also run air conditioning, costs $8,500 to $13,000 and adds up to 550 pounds. The bunk heater is the version a tight-margin owner-operator can actually afford. And in the truly brutal stretches, drivers run both at once, the engine at high idle to save the engine, the little furnace to save themselves. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. None of this was invented for American truckers. The two companies behind nearly all of them are German. Eberspeicher began in 1865 as a tinsmith's shop and was building vehicle heaters by 1933. Webasto, founded in 1901, has built them since the 30s and calls itself the pioneer of the parking heater. Meanwhile, North America fought the same war with cruder weapons. One North Dakota mail carrier drained his engine oil every night, kept it warm indoors, and poured it back each morning. Neighbors shoveled glowing furnace coals under their cars. In 1947, an engineer named Andrew Freeman had enough. He soldered the heating element from a clothes iron into copper tubing and started his car at 29 below. His head bolt heater was patented in 1949 and sold 250,000 units in 4 years. And that invention is why your own neighborhood is about to look different. Once you know what these machines look like, the winter world stops hiding from you. That cord dangling from pickup grills across Minnesota, Manitoba, and Alaska is the direct descendant of Freeman's clothes iron contraption, and the reason far north parking lots come with electrical outlets on posts, as if the cars were phones that need charging overnight. The same parking heaters that warm truck bunks are factory equipment in ordinary cars across cold country Europe, thawing cabins before commuters finish breakfast. That camper van at the trailhead, frost on the glass, a faint whisper of exhaust from a thumb-sized pipe under the door, is a bunk heater, the same brands and the same loaf of bread furnace. Sailboats and work vans run them too. Then there is the part you've been buying without knowing it. Every November, diesel pumps across the northern states quietly start selling a different product, blended, treated, winterized, and they switch back in spring, Nobody announces it. Part of the price you pay is anti-wax chemistry. Now stack it up, because this lands exactly where you live. Your January strawberries, the insulin at your pharmacy, the package on your porch during a cold snap. Much of it crossed the high plains behind a driver who slept just fine at 30 below zero because a tiny furnace under the mattress sipped a coffee cup of diesel an hour while the night tried and failed to get in. So here's where you actually land. You started this picturing trucks rumbling through a deadly night, assuming brute force. Just leave it running. Now you know the truth is a stack of survival tricks, each one holding up the next. The fuel is re-engineered every winter so it cannot turn to wax. The radiator gets smothered under a quilt so a running engine does not freeze while running. A 1947 invention, built from a clothes iron, warms the block from a parking lot outlet. In the deepest cold, a warm engine is never allowed to die. And under the mattress, a German-built furnace the size of a loaf of bread burns a coffee cup of diesel an hour, so a human being can sleep at room temperature in air that frostbites skin in 10 minutes. Therefore the freight moves. Therefore the shelves stay full. Therefore winter loses. You're not just looking at trucks parked in the cold. You're looking at a 100-year arms race between the diesel engine and the thermometer. And the engine is winning. And if you think keeping a truck alive at 40 below zero is impressive, wait until you hear what airliners do to keep jet fuel flowing at minus 70 degrees, 6 miles above your head.